Geno is one of the most powerful men in the Omniverse, and not only that, he is one of the most important characters in the Fortnite storyline, just like the Q Queen, the Origin, the Foundation, Dark Voyager, etc. etc. But Geno's life is something that nobody in the Fortnite community knows about him. Because when we first look at Geno for the past couple of years, we thought he is this evil, sciencey person who, just like any other mad scientist, based on stereotypes, he led an organization that wants to take full and central control of the entire Zero Point and the island, and wants to put people in a never-ending loop, which make them like slaves or something like that. But the thing is, many people misunderstand entirely, as we know about his true origins already since Chapter 4. But the thing is, Geno's story does not start in Chapter 4. It started all the way back, way before Chapter 1 even started. And just like Dark Voyager and the others, Geno is one of the oldest characters, but not too old since he's only thousands of years old. And he's immortal. But there are some more questions than answers, just like my last video. What reality did he came from? How did he get his immortality? And most of all, why did he form the Imagined Order? And after Collision, where did Geno go? And where is he now as of 2026 in Fortnite Chapter 7? There is a lot I want to explain about Geno, which I've been waiting for the past couple of years since Geno has been mentioned, since the Zero Crisis finale when Jones brought it up to the Foundation.
I can get you to Geno.
And the sisters.
And the biggest part of all is that we never got an actual Geno skin. The closest thing to a Geno is the Ageless, which looks like this. Like, he is this handsome man who is so young. Like, he looks like he's in his 20s and all. If you look at the real Geno, he looks like he's 40 or 50. He looked old. But what happened over there? Despite that, the Ageless, which is what I have right here, is the snapshot of Geno as you see here. Why is he even there to begin with? And why does he rule the Oathbound, which is like the primitive Imagined Order? Why doesn't Geno rule the Oathbound right now? And this is where I'm going to be explaining Geno's origins and how he came to be one of the most powerful characters in the entire storyline, and how he formed the entire Imagined Order, not by himself, because he didn't form the Imagined Order by himself. He formed with a massive inner circle, including his daughters, which I'm going to be mentioning later on in this video, by the way. I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison real quick, guys, because this right here used to be Geno. This is the Ageless. I'm using the Ageless skin for example. This is Geno now. In the very beginning, Geno was not in Reality Zero yet. He was in his own reality. This is known as the Oathbound reality, or Geno's homeworld. It is basically a medieval reality where Geno used to live in. And when Geno was young, there was no Oathbound yet. And nobody knows what Geno's life was like way before the Imagined Order and way before the Oathbound even began. He's basically just lived in a medieval kingdom where he basically just enjoys his life there because it looks beautiful. But it's believed that the inhabitants of this reality noticed something about Geno that nobody knows, and Geno later discovered himself. You see, the reality where Geno lives in almost looks similar to Reality Zero in a way, because it is mentioned by Jones itself that once you are basically in this reality, especially Reality Zero, or like a loop where it goes randomly with like 0 point energy and stuff, you're basically immortal in a way where you can't age. As long as you're in Reality Zero or some type of other reality like Geno's reality, and it appears that randomly Geno is special. He cannot age as long as he in his reality. So since he used to live in his reality and not Reality Zero, he's very lucky, which leads him forming his faction known as the Ageless Order, or should I say, more commonly, the Oathbound. When Geno formed the Oathbound Empire, it's basically like the primitive Imagined Order. Like, he has full control over the territory of that reality. People have to bow down to the Ageless and all. It's gotten to a point where Geno cannot age so much that he wanted to stay in power forever. And the situations with Riftward and Stalin, who basically mentions that about a shapeless man who basically binds with, Imagined and Order, and this is according to Riftward and Stalin. He basically fears so much that he has to build some type of rift gate to literally travel out. But it's gotten to the point that because of Riftward and Stalin prophecy, this feared the inhabitants of that reality. And it's gotten to the point that at some point of unknown time, it's believed that Geno faced a lot of huge rebellions against the inhabitants of his reality. Because Geno is immortal in that reality and he can't age and he can't leave, and he's soon going to become like a scientist one day, because if you take a look in the Citadel, you would see some type of symbols over there. And as you can take a look, you can see the triangle, a square, and a circle all together. By the way, guys, I forgot to mention in my video this whole time, but if you don't know what that symbol of a circle, triangle, square, and circle is, this symbol is known as Philosopher's Stone, and it's basically this type of elixir of life that gives you immortality. And this was used during the Middle Ages. Apologies for forgetting to mention that, but yeah, let's continue the video. And this is a symbol of alchemy, which is basically a group of scientists that back in the Middle Ages used this symbol to like achieve some type of immortality or something like that. Which basically, I assume that in two ways. Number one, Geno's reality is pretty lucky and he receives immortality as long as he stays in the loop over there. Number two, it's believed that Geno must have been a genetic scientist much earlier in his life, way before the Imagined Order in his reality, before he went to Reality Zero, and it's gotten to the point that he practiced some early alchemy, which is a group of science, and he basically coded his genes in a way where he made himself immortal. That's where he gets his absolute immortality from. But I'm not sure about this. Let me know in the comments if you think how did Geno get his immortality, which I'm going to be explaining later on as he got to Reality Zero. People got so mad and they rebelled against Geno, and Geno decides to unexpectedly leave his home reality. And as he left there, a snapshot of Geno was created, which is why I have the Ageless skin right now, because this right here, the Ageless skin, is a snapshot of Geno, his early snapshot. And once again, that was way before the Imagined Order was even a thing. It's the same young man, long hair, white strip, armor, with the 0 point symbols, you know, the Ageless Empire symbol. And this was the time where Geno abandons his own empire and has the snapshot, the Ageless Champion, to take over. Because that was Geno's original title, the Ageless Champion. After Geno left his home reality, he unexpectedly went to Reality Zero, and he discovered that this reality was pretty perfect. But there's a problem. Geno ended up aging a little bit. Because his cores travel outside of his home reality and he got to Reality Zero, since they both similar to each other, this made Geno a little bit aged. And basically, it's gotten to the point that Geno unexpectedly met with some people that lived in Reality Zero, which includes a familiar guy, which I'm going to be explaining later on. And they said about a rumor about a 0 point existing. It's believed that the Imagined Order has formed, which I'm going to be explaining how the Geno formed the Imagined Order, guys, which is very complex.
We've run things successfully for thousands of years. We, the Imagined Order, facing crisis after crisis, without a single failure.
You see, Geno was discussed with his inner circle about the last reality and how they're going to take over the entire Omniverse. And the only way to protect themselves and defend themselves is by making a faction where it's going to oppose the last reality, as well as making a perfect civilization that would protect inhabitants. And they would have to study this thing where it's hidden underneath their island. And most of all, how they can actually manipulate it in a way to travel to different realities quicker than how the last reality will travel their cube's cradle and invade realities and stuff. And how they might be able to defend it. As you can see, there's evidence of that when we saw in Chapter 2, Season 7, where Dr. Sloan decides to defend the island by having her entire IO army and herself defend the island, especially for Operation Skyfire. That might be the reasons why the Imagined Order formed in the first place, because of the last reality. Another way is to create a perfect civilization, because Geno visions imagination of perfect order, which is according to Stellan about a shapeless man. And basically the shapeless man that Stellan mentioned earlier, that could be Geno. I'm not sure about this, but that could be Geno, because he envisions imagination of perfect order. But it's got to the point that Geno and his inner circle went to Loot Lake at somehow, and they ended up through a vault, and they got into the vault, they discovered the 0 point, and what we know, they found it. They'd begin studying the 0 point, and it also mentions that this familiar guy, which I will explain, is the Foundation, the founder and leader of the Seven, which I'm going to explain how he formed the Seven. The Foundation has been studying the 0 point for a very long time, as he mentions. And as a result, he and Geno have been assumed or allegedly worked together in some ways. And then in some unknown period of time, as Geno decides to build a bridge, and he recruits Dr. Sloan, Jones, and so many other people, as they got to the Imagined Order, I think Geno never met Jones before, so I think it was Dr. Sloan, and then later on, she recruits Jones. But yeah, Geno recruits Dr. Sloan, Gunner, and many other people. And as a genetic scientist, he was able to, extract out his genes in some way and decide to place them in like capsules. Before he did that, he formed his own pocket reality called the Realm, which is a artificial reality created by Geno himself to do all of his, lab work over there. And it's appeared that because of CRISPR, he made himself absolute immortal, and not only that, he used that same CRISPR to edit out his genes and made it into different ways, which led to the creation of his two daughters, the Imagined and the Order, which will later on become members of the Seven, because they used to be part of the Imagined Order, but then Geno, because at first Geno had them with in Reality Zero as their massive reality playground or something like that, but then later on, Geno throw them into the loop, and they're like the first people to jump into the loop through the 0 point. And the result of that is that two snapshots of the Imagined and the Order were created, so Geno replaced them with those two stronger snapshots. At the same time, Geno was also abusing the 0 point ways, where he ordered his entire army, including Dr. Sloan, to kidnap people from different realities and created Fortnite, which is basically a 22-minute loop where people have to fight each other, they can't communicate, they can't remember everything. And then it's got to the point that the Foundation and the sisters, the Imagined and the Order, know this very quickly as to what Geno was doing. As well as 3 more people, the Scientist, the Visitor, and the Paradigm, as they both lived the island before, other than Paradigm, who she's from like Reality 659 and stuff, which I'll talk about later on. They come together and they decide to rebel against Geno, which led to the formation of the Seven, with Foundation becoming the leader. And Geno became so feared that he had to overprotect the Imagined Order in a way, and that Geno had to go to hiding to different realities to prevent himself from being captured by the Foundation. Because of his fears of the Foundation and that their friendship has been broken, it made it impossible to basically come back with the Foundation to continue their perfect world and stuff like that. I think he thinks that the Foundation has another way for a perfect world, like an Imagined Order for himself, which is why Geno fears of that for the Foundation. But decided to let it slide anyway, because what I'll get to after that, it was basically like the time where Geno disintegrated, which I'll explain later on. But yeah, because of this, Geno went to hiding to different realities. One of those is Reality 266, which we're in right now, and the evidence of this was 2 locations, Interloop Labs and Classify Canyon, which are 2 major, very important locations, what I'll explain here, because Classify Canyon is believed to be one of those locations where the Area 07 base was located. The Origin, who used to be the Cube King of the last reality, who escaped earlier, the Imagined Order was able to capture him and take him to an IO prison somewhere around the Area 07 facility in Classify Canyon. And the evidence of this is that I showed you earlier, but I'll show you again. If you take a look at the Origin's prison outfit, you can see the number 07. And then you get Interloop Labs, now Lethal Labs, since it's controlled by Dark Voyager, which is allegedly an IO base as well, but also it is one of those very important locations which possesses the collider, which uses 0 point energy, before that 0 point shard came to be. But yeah, the Origin was captured by the Imagined Order, but he escaped and joined the Seven, and Geno became defeated to the point where he had to stay in hiding. So the thing is, guys, despite around Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 as the Imagined Order plays a part of the first island, I am not going to be mentioning about Chapter 1, Chapter 2, because there's no direct mention of Geno back in the day. And not only that, Geno did not went involved in most major events except for like the end, where he basically had to recalculate everything for the Seven's failures to restart the entire island, which led to the creation of the Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 islands. So I'm gonna stick with Chapter 2 for now on, and I'm gonna go for the stories right here in Chapter 2. Starting with Chapter 2 Season 4, the Marvel season. It all changed in that season because Galactus heard like the ripples of the end event, especially for the 0 point energy, from like the explosion caused by the Seven to Geno reforming the islands, and then he starts entering it, and then the Marvel superheroes, especially for the Avengers, along with Tony Stark, decide to enter the island and battle Galactus, but this went horribly as the 0 point was exposed once again. It was destroyed by Galactus, but not fully destroyed, it was cracked. And then we had to like battle Galactus with billion battle buses thanks to Tony Stark interfering with the loop. But the good news is we were able to beat Galactus. Galactus gets rifted back to Reality 616. The 0 point was exposed. The Imagined Order freaks out, and it's gotten to the point that Geno orders a massive evacuation order. He then, like, away from Reality Zero, he orders the Imagined Order to, like, not have the loopers escape the loop, because that would, like, foil his plans of a perfect world and stuff like that. And it's gotten to the point that Sloan calls Jones to get the best bounty hunters across all realities to prevent people from escaping the loop. Before Jones left, she tried to tell Sloan to not bring the 7 as it fears Geno the most. But then Jones didn't listen and jumps through the 0 point. And then he goes find the bounty hunters. But then, the problem is the Imagined Order is not helping as much. It's gotten to the point that the Imagined Order was staying, like, very silent. They're not helping enough for the 0 point. Especially for Jones doing it all by himself. Not Geno, nothing. Which is mentioned by that reality log that Jones made, which I'm gonna play playing right now.
Reality log doesn't even matter. What's the point of recording these logs if you're not gonna listen? We've lost control of the 0 point. Do you get what that means? You must not, because you're doing nothing. I've dedicated my life to the Order. I've given everything. And for what? To just sit back and watch reality end? That's not who we are. At least it's not who I am. Not anymore.
And then it's gotten to the point that he goes to one of the files for the 7, where he basically has to go and find a member of a 7 that would help, you know, fix the 0 point. But then Dr. Sloan got super upset because Jones is going through the orders of, like, the Oath of the Imagined Order. Jones didn't care. He disconnects with Sloan, and this got Sloan very angered. And then as he goes through a massive civil war caused by, you know, the 0 point's mass explosion and almost collapse, because the 0 point continues to collapse itself as it's, like, breaking even more. Jones uses Rift device to throw it towards the now cracked 0 point, and it spawns the Foundation via meteor. As the Foundation comes out, he then realizes Jones, and he thinks he is an Imagined Order agent, despite that he left the Imagined Order recently. So at first, the Foundation tried to fight Jones, but then Jones mentions the first words to the Foundation. Geno, I can get you to Geno. And then the Foundation says, and the sisters. And then Jones says, I can get you to all of them, but I need you to fix that. And the Foundation has the deal. They then work together to fix the 0 point. But mind you, Chapter 2, Season 6, in the very beginning, was the first time where Geno's name was mentioned. But at that time, Geno was not even in Reality Zero at all. He was in exile. So basically, he had to work on behind the scenes. Possibly, allegedly, Reality 266, since it's this reality where he basically works in most of his work. Or the realm, his pocket reality, where he continues his life as a genetic scientist away. For free time. But yeah, the 0 point was fixed, the Foundation seals himself, the Imagined Order thought he died, but then Season 7 came along after that, with Master Raz, the Mothership, boom. But then if you go to Corny Complex, you will realize a picture of a similar guy with black hair and a white strip around it, indicating that it's Geno, and this is the first time we see Geno in an appearance, but not a skin, but only just a photograph. Which is him giving a certificate to Dr. Sloan. And in this appearance, Geno's hair appears to have been, like, shorter. It was cut short. He used to have long hair, but then he cut his hair short to look like this. As you can see, he has glasses, he has a ring that looks like this, and he's wearing a black suit. Like, just like any other, like, politician. I'll assume allegedly that this was it was like a vintage photo when Dr. Sloan first joined the Imagined Order as part of the island management team. But still, it is like the first time we see Geno, but in the portrait. Then Geno's mentions again was in Chapter 2, Season 8, as like the end event where the Q Queen opens the portal to the last reality, spawning the Q's cradle, and everything goes in chaos. The Foundation, who has been gone for a long time, who was in reality NF 1935 due to the Mothership, and he survived. And then he goes back home to Reality Zero via Batman Comics. He then goes to the bridge to find Jones, and Dr. Sloan thought that the Foundation died, but he didn't. He frees Jones from being brainwashed, he kills Gunner, and then closes the door against Sloan before Sloan actually does things. And then Foundation mentions, you promised me Geno, because the Foundation was still looking for Geno. He doesn't know where he is. Like, dude, Geno is not even in the island now. He'll probably be returning around Chapter 3. And then the Seven's attempts of coming back to, like, you know, free the 0 point and battle the Imagined Order came to a very beginning, as Geno, behind the scenes, noticed that the Seven's plans are trying to foil his plans of making a perfect world, try to free the 0 point, destroy the loop. And then Geno got so mad that he offered a declaration of war because he had enough with the Seven. He had enough of foiling his plans, he had enough trying to, like, interfere with everything. He had enough of the Foundation betraying him, and it's gotten to the point that their friendship was completely tore apart, to the point that tension started rising against the Seven and the Imagined Order. Even after the island manages to flip, after the flipping mechanism to the Chapter 3 side, the war was only just the beginning. In Chapter 3 Season 1, as the island flipped to the Chapter 3 side of the island, the Seven are already preparing for war, and it's gotten to the point that Geno had so much enough that he orders Dr. Sloan and his entire inner circle to activate the mole teams, and the first locations where they started their ground bases was Culver Cavern, a massive mountain where Gunner is in full control. No worries, Gunner's not eliminated since he's immortal, but an effect will happen later on at that point. But yeah, Geno orders the mole teams to dig up, causing massive quakes across the Chapter 3 island, and it's gotten to the point that Dr. Sloan, Gunner, and several other people, including like the soldiers of the mole team, start spreading across the island, going crazy, and then the scientists are trying to coerce with the Seven to unite, and they need a paradigm for the war, and the scientist demands the paradigm to come back, despite the Seven not liking the paradigm because the paradigm betrayed the Seven when defeating the monster during the Monster Robot Fight Final Showdown in Chapter 1 Season 9. She destroyed the 0 point, she took the 0 point, she cracked it and destroyed it in order to defeat the monster, and the Seven does not trust the paradigm because of that. And also teaming up with the Imagined Order too. And there are some cases that originally Geno wanted to build some doomsday device during the monster event, but paused because the paradigm wanted to volunteer of the Imagined Order in order for helps for the monster. But the mech team leader will have a massive effect later on. Over the course of the rest of the season, the Imagined Order are already preparing for war. They're getting their weapons ready, they're getting their IO guards ready, they're getting their troops ready, and it's gotten to the point that the Seven at any time now are already at their bases and outposts, getting ready for the first move. But then Chapter 3 Season 2 came along. The war has begun. The Imagined Order's mole teams grew so much that a massive drill started appearing out of nowhere, and Geno ordered the massive invasion of the Artemis Island, the Chapter 3 island, where they occupied the majority of it. They occupied most of the island, and it's gotten to the point where Dr. Sloan was ordered to remove building. She removes building, nobody can build. And over the course of months, alongside of other Seven members such as the Origin, the Imagined, the Order, the Scientists, and finally the Paradigm, Geno is already making plans on making a comeback by means of occupation and trying to make sure the loop is as stable as possible so that he can recruit the last of the loopers so they can suffer more on his so-called perfect world. But then his plans are being foiled. And this is where Geno goes so far for the war that he hires Dr. Doom, who was recently at the Chapter 2 island at the time, but then comes to the Chapter 3 island through the bridge, where he gets hired to become one of the members of the inner circle of the Imagined Order in order to help capture the Seven. And to make sure that his plans are not foiled, Dr. Doom accepted this offer, and he is now a member of the Imagined Order. It's gotten to the point that Geno is becoming more of a menace now since he is hiring Dr. Doom, which would foreshadow for like the next chapter. But while it was going on, the Seven was able to regain territory of the island, and the IO occupation was reduced, thanks to the Resistance, another group related to the Seven, able to recapture as much territory as they can. And Geno got so upset that he had no choice but to come to Reality Zero anyway through the 0 point, or without the 0 point, since Geno has the ability to like access realities without using the 0 point via 0 point energy since he's interconnected. And it's appeared that Geno has arrived at Reality Zero at some point. If you take a look at the loading screen for the Order skin, you can see a Doomsday device that looks like this. And this is the Collider. It was a Doomsday device created by Geno, similar to that of the device that Midas tried to use to destroy the loop. This device would detonate the 0 point and would destroy the loop within, killing everybody across the Chapter 3 island, and would possibly blow up the 0 point, risking the nothing coming back. But that was Geno's plan. He created a doomsday device to get rid of the Seven, and then you can see Dr. Sloan holding it, ordering the construction of the doomsday device onto Loot Lake. Not the same Loot Lake as the one in the Chapter 1 island, but a smaller version of Loot Lake. But in Loot Lake, they constructed the collider the Seven are fearing, especially for the origin, where that device were to happen, and according to the simulation via quests, you can see what happens over here.
Activate the simulation. Everything in the loop. Gone. Just like that. I won't watch another world end. We're going to win this.
And the Seven feared that if they don't stop this, it would be the end of reality, so they would have to make another plan, and that is through Paradigm. And they realized that the Paradigm had the robot earlier, the Mecha Team Leader, and the Seven, alongside of, Spider-Man and the other gang, they ended up taking a trip to the Ice Moon to meet up with the Ice King, where they found the already destroyed robot over here. And on the Seven's moon base, the robot gets repaired to something new, like a 7 style, in the blue and red style, and it made it to like a perfect upgrade for the destruction of the Collider. And then around the 0 Point Comics issue number 5, aka Collision, Geno calls Dr. Sloan to activate the Collider and to get ready to blow and detonate this entire Reality Zero up, as he goes megalomanium and tries to blow up Reality Zero to get rid of the Seven and all. But then the Paradigm, along with 4 other people, decide to launch the robot from the Ice Moon all the way back to Reality Zero to get one final stance. And this is where things take a turn. During Collision, as the Paradigm goes on destroying everything, especially for the mechs, the brute mechs as we saw in Season X, and the airships destroyed and all, the blade and everything was going in total chaos. The Imagined Order tried to fight back the robot as they saw it was brand new, and it's like the same robot as they given by the Singularity to the Paradigm, and it's gotten to the point that their plans have been reversed. But then the second the Paradigm tried to use her blade towards the Collider, the ground ended up collapsing up underneath, and it was revealed that the bridge had been renovated in a way to fit the 0 Point through the Collider in order to detonate it. And it's gotten to the point that near the end, as everything goes beyond chaos, as the robot as the mech gets destroyed again, the Imagined and the Order then try to help out people and stuff. And then you see Spider-Man, Wolverine, and the other gang. But then there's the biggest fear. Ended up getting contact with Geno. Geno this whole time was up on the platform of the Collider, and he went down to where near the bridge is, and he fires an energy beam at Iron Man. Then the Imagined noticed that Iron Man was almost killed, and then calls the Order before Geno ends up going in front of the Sisters and Wolverine. They got into a huge fight, and it was crazy. And if you take a look at 0 One Comics, like it was just like energy beams and blasts. And then they start hanging out on the 0 Point. The Imagined tried to damage Geno's fighter jets and prevent him from escaping. And then the Imagined made her ultimate sacrifice by causing her to drop with Geno to the 0 Point. And both of them disintegrated into pieces. But guys, let me tell you something. In the Collision event, if you take a look over there, by the way, do you see this guy? That's Geno. But he's using Gunner's model because they don't have a Geno skin yet. They don't want to like ruin the surprise because they had to use Gunner for this whole teaser because once again they don't have a Geno skin to like cover that for the event. So basically it's funny that they had to use Gunner as like the main placeholder for Geno. It's really funny. But yeah, both Geno and his daughter the Imagined drop to the 0 Point and they get discorporated immediately. And as the Foundation and Jones and the other loopers get to where, where the 0 Point is, as the Evil Red, they met with Dr. Sloan. And with Dr. Sloan with her tank, she says any last words, Jones, before getting crushed by the robot's arm.
Sloan! You don't have to do this!
Always so dramatic.
Any last words, Jones?
Look out?
And it was the Paradigm. She was able to still live on, and it's gotten to the point that the Paradigm holds out her hand to get Jones, the Foundation, and the others get closer more to the 0 point, and then the 0 point shows a massive evil looking silhouette of a guy in dark purple and stuff with yellow eyes just looking at them. And then Jones does not know who's that guy. And then the Foundation says the 0 point is focused on Geno. This is our best chance to find him. And then both Jones and the Foundation jump to the 0 point to look for Geno.
Who is that?
The 0 point is focused on Geno. This is our best chance to find him.
Let's go!
And meanwhile, the Loopers were able to shoot out the crystals, destroying the collider and free the 0 point, marking the end of the war.
0 point. Take him out. Point's almost to the top. Last one. That's it. We did it. Don't worry, I got you.
The Foundation and Jones enter the realm, which is Geno's pocket reality of his entire laboratory. And they saw Geno holding the Imagined. And if you look through more of the comics, you can see Geno is holding his daughter, both disintegrating into bits. And then Geno says his final words to the Foundation as the Foundation tells him to explain himself, and this is what Geno said. The last words to the Foundation is that he was just trying to tell him about protecting and perfecting all realities using the 0 point, acknowledging that the Foundation was right that failure would mean the end of everything, which foreshadows Chapter 3, Season 4. Then admits defeat and tells him to master the 0 point however he can before fading away at a molecular level alongside of the Imagined. And before that, he then tries to set his one last question about the blonde fellow, indicating that he has never, ever met Jones before in his life. And then a moment of silence came. The Foundation was in super shock. He's right. Geno was right this whole time. He's on his own now. It's up to him, the Foundation, to take care of this reality. And if he does a wrong job, that would mark the end of everything. Which foreshadows of what Geno mentioned to the Foundation, or foreshadows something even worse. As Geno disappears, Jones and the Foundation go back to the Chapter 3 island. And then time passes. As many chapters go by, especially through chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, no more mention of Geno has been, except for the Ageless. As many chapters pass, each atom of Geno gets rebuilt from one bit, one clump, to another clump, to another clump, from different realities. And then over the course of days, months, years, or felt like it's almost an eternity, the molecules, the atoms turn to molecules turn to macromolecules, and then cells and everything. It's rebuilding Geno. And then over the course of time, Geno is fully rebuilt back to his original form. And it reads, not the end, indicating that Geno's absolute immortality still lives on. And allegedly, the Imagined, his daughter, since the Imagined also has the same immortality as Geno. But yeah, guys, what do you think was going to happen? Because I appeared that Geno might appear again somewhere around Chapter 7, possibly Chapter 7 Season 2, when he gets in contact with Dark Voyager through the Golden Galaxy. Because if you take a look at Reality 35, this reality is kind of golden. Like, it's like bright gold. Like, everything is gold, the cube is gold, the motherships are gold, the cube cradle is gold, Dark Voyager ship is gold, Dark Voyager is gold, everything's gold. Geno is gold. You take a look at his armor from, like, before the Imagined Order to the Imagined Order, especially from his Oathbound armor to the Imagined Order, it's all golden. Geno likes gold, especially when it aspires for golden cubes, which makes it why this whole reality, as you see here, is golden reality. And this whole golden thing is like an obsession because gold represents royalty and all, and it represents like a powerful energy that Geno shoots out with like concentrated 0-point energy. It makes Geno very powerful. But it's assuming that around this time, as you saw in the Fortnite Zero War comics that says not at the end, I assume it takes place around sometime around chapter 7. And I think these other scenes that you saw here was around like chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, and then until we get to Reality 35 in chapter 7, where we see Geno fully rebuilt. And it's gotten to the point as time more passes, since it takes longer for Geno to like rebuild himself. Since not only he's immortal, but he's pretty old, but not that old. He's probably like thousands of years old, as in these large time scales. Especially for like the Herald invading the island, destroying the island, from the Ageless, where he was able to revamp his kingdom in chapter 4, Rift War and Sullen with the prophecy about the shapeless man, the Ageless going through the Rift Gate to different realities, and then in chapter 5, the Ageless just, you know, hanging out in the chapter 5 reality, and then you get chapter 6. Nothing's mentioned about Geno, but I could assure you guys that when it comes to Geno in chapter 7, it would be like another huge comeback for the Fortnite storyline, because we saw that the return to the 7 was just 1 point. But Geno returning to the storyline, especially in chapter 7, and getting a literal Geno skin, not the Ageless I have wearing right now, but an actual Geno skin, it seems that it will bring Fortnite a lot of aura, as he will be combating with Dark Voyager and his enemies. And I could be wrong at that point, because when I watched this guy called Genesis Studios, you could see that Geno was still around, especially around Fortnite Chapter 4, where he puts everybody in so-called the deep sleep. Guys, if you really want to watch like these events that based on Geno, especially for like the Operation Skyfire Aftermath, the Big Bang Unwarped, you should go subscribe to Genesis Studios. I'll put his link below so you can watch this, especially for a great concept of a Geno skin. And for Wizard Studios that actually has a concept of a Geno skin that looks like this is very valid, because it basically kept the same, like, you know, age as like the Ageless, since the Ageless is like in his 20s, like, but it's kind of inaccurate because Geno's like much older. Like, if you take a look at Geno's appearance, especially in the comics, and like the portrait that we saw through like Fortnite Complex, he looks middle-aged. But then here's the biggest part. How is Geno's comeback gonna impact the entire Fortnite storyline? Well, I could assure you that when it comes to Geno's comeback, especially post-Imaginor wise of trying to defeat Dark Voyager and the Last Reality, Geno's like the key way to like defeat the Last Reality. Because here's the thing. The Foundation failed everything. I mentioned that in my last video, but the Foundation failed to protect reality, protect the 0 point. The Herald, you know, came around and then started destroying the island. And then Geno like told the Foundation, he warned the Foundation earlier that this was gonna happen, especially in these large time scales. It wouldn't happen again as long as Geno has like other plans when he comes back. And I could imagine that if Geno does come back to the storyline, that would mean a way that both the 7 and Geno had no choice but to join forces to destroy the Last Reality, because if Geno and the Imagined Order and the 7 are just fighting each other, they're not doing everything for like the Omniverse. They're just letting more realities get destroyed at one point. But then in another point, Geno at the same time uses the 0 point to abuse it for the loop. But it could be that one day, just like Dr. Sloan, Geno would change his ways to the point where he messed up. This is not the perfect world that he wants to build. And it could be possible that him and the Foundation might become friends again, despite that they have two different ideologies and different views. It's like Democrats and Republicans. It's like the ideology of like the leftists and the rightists. It's like that, but it's like in the spectrums of Geno and the spectrums of the Foundation. The spectrums of Geno, as I can explain for his mental capacity, is that he really wants reality to be safe. He really wants to make sure that the inhabitants of the Omniverse wants to make sure that they live very comfortably in a perfect world, where he has to make sure that no threats from the Last Reality were opposed, especially that the Imagined Order would be like the best government to take care of the inhabitants over there. And as for the Seven, their ideology is kind of different because they saw the Imagined Order at the same time was abusing the 0 point. They create the 22-minute loop. It's basically interfering everything, and it's involving more danger over there. And despite that, they didn't do everything, especially during the days of Chapter 2, Season 5, where it's just Jones by himself. That makes it clear that it prefers more the Seven better than the Imagined Order. But at the same time, the Seven had failed their ways because they failed to literally notice the 0 point sentience, because the 0 point has a sentience of communicating by spawning different relics to warn about the coming of the Herald. And then after it got destroyed by the last reality, the Seven failed. They got chromed, the Paradigm allegedly died, or possibly she's still alive, and then right now they're all scattered. Despite that, the Order and the Visitor and the Foundation are the confirmed survivors. The Scientist is still in the last reality corrupted, the Origin is somewhere else. Although he did survive the last reality, especially the Chrome, he's somewhere else. And the Snapshot Imagine is probably still in the last reality. Not the real Imagine, because she's still rebuilding at this point along with Geno. But the Snapshot Imagine, as I mentioned, where we saw in the Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3 trailer for Vibin, we saw the Snapshot Imagined. And it could appear that the Snapshot Imagined might come back, as well as the real Imagined. It'll get to the point that despite that both the Imagined Order and the Seven have different ideologies, although they like almost look the same, but with different ideologies to themselves, as they both want to make sure the 0 point safe and the inhabitants are safe, but at the same time, no danger does not want to be posted to 0 point. Unlike the last reality, where their goal is to annihilate every single reality and bring the nothing back, as it used to be, where there was like pure nothingness, like pure pitch black. Maybe the Imagined Order might reform under like the Seven's way at some point, but Geno's way might be way better because Geno's a genetic scientist. He knows a lot of the last reality even before the Seven. But at the same time, he realized about the Foundation that because the Foundation controls the power of chromium and has claimed to survive the nothing multiple times, which is confirmed because the reason why the Foundation must have survived the Chrome is because, number one, if you take a look at the Batman comics, the Foundation has claimed to survive the nothing beyond the realities, which is basically like the unknown. And the Foundation has claimed to survive the nothing at all. Number two, he has survived multiple ways, especially almost sacrificing his life for the 0 point, but ends up in reality end of 1935 anyway, thanks to the mothership. And third, the hit list, where I mentioned before in my last video, the Foundation is the seventh man to be like targeted by the last reality, especially for Dark Voyager. And Geno could see a great tool for the Foundation because both of them used to be best friends, but because they were broken apart because of their two different belief systems, and not only that, their futures that they're putting towards the Omniverse, it has got them super divided to the point that they just fight. Like, they literally just fight each other and go at each other's throats. Well, the people of Reality Zero and the people of all realities need to be protected by one or the other. But in my opinions, if the Foundation and Geno would have worked together and solved things out instead of just continue fighting, especially in Chapter 3, if this would have never happened, if the Foundation and Geno would have just truced together to like work together to like protect themselves for the last reality, and know the signs of the 0 point relics early, because Geno studied the 0 point too other than the Foundation, they would have detected the Herald much earlier, and the Herald would have been caught way earlier to the point that her plans would have been foiled by Geno, and the Foundation, and the Seven, and it would have gone to the point that the Chapter 3 and Chapter 2 islands will never been destroyed. The 0 point will never go through this absolute suffering as it currently is around Chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. And even as of Chapter 7, 0 point shards are being collected by the last reality, especially Dark Voyager, who works independently, who basically works for like the cubes and the nothing, and is going there to put the 0 point in absolute total control around Chapter 7, Season 2, and beyond, and it would end very horribly. Meaning, in my opinion, the only way for Dark Voyager and the last reality to be defeated altogether is that if Geno and the Foundation and the Seven realize that they should not fight each other, they should reunite together, they should come together as like a family of some sort, and they had to realize that they together, if they were to join forces together and create like a unified faction, not the Seven, not the Imagined Order, but like a unified faction which is based off, like, you know, the Reality Warriors from back in the day, because we saw what the Reality Warriors were doing based on Reality 659. If they were to create a super faction that would defeat the last reality, they would. But it's gonna take a lot of effort in finding the last of the Summer members to get the sword out. And then Geno would become more powerful again, this time teaming up with the Foundation. And one day, by the end of Chapter 7, the last reality would have been fully defeated before they can do their last plan for Phase 2 and beyond. But yeah, I just wasted like almost 20 minutes of explaining this about Geno and how would Geno like shape the future for Fortnite. But yeah, guys, what is your thoughts on Geno and how would he like shape reality in the future, especially for Reality 266, presumably the new Reality 0? And would Geno and the Foundation would work back in terms to like become friends again and would join forces to defeat Dark Voyager? Let me know. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and I'll give you guys more updates. See you soon.